Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Men in Green from PakPassion, along with the voice of PakPassion, i.e., Saj Sadek. And today we're going to discuss basically how the World Cup's gone for most of the teams, in fact, all of the teams. And I'd just like to start immediately and ask Saj what he thinks about how Netherlands have done, basically, in this World Cup.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think Netherlands came into the tournament as probably most people thought of them as the whipping boys. With all due respect, 9 matches. I think people probably thought they'd lose all 9 matches, but the fact that they won 2 matches and one of them was against South Africa, who reached the semi-finals and had a very good tournament, and then they also beat Bangladesh. So 2 wins out of 9, whilst it doesn't sound great, but I think for a team like Netherlands, again, with all due respect, is a fantastic achievement. I think the toughest aspect for Netherlands is the fact that they don't get these opportunities to play most of the big teams. When I say big teams, I mean like the teams who are regularly playing in World Cup tournaments. So, firstly, for them to actually make the World Cup finals and then to win 2 games in that round robin stage, fantastic achievement. They should hold their heads up high, and hopefully, this can be the launch pad for Netherlands cricket to improve, to grow the game in the country as well.
Hmm. And Sri Lanka, I mean, what a mess they got themselves into. I mean, they didn't have a great tournament, and then the whole board got banned, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, how do you look at that? How do you look at Sri Lanka?
Well, I think Sri Lanka cricket is probably vying with the Pakistan Cricket Board for um, Comedy Cricket Board of the Year. They came to the tournament as through the qualifying stage, and I think once all those bowlers of theirs, I think they lost 4 or 5 of their frontline bowlers at the start of the tournament. So they came into the tournament on the back foot with all these injuries, missing some quality bowlers. So it was always going to be an uphill struggle for them. I think the way they played and obviously only beating Netherlands, and they had a really good result against a struggling England. But I think that was the only high point, really. They obviously lost to Pakistan in that high scoring match when they scored 340 plus. But their bowling was an absolute mess. A couple of the batters, I think Nisanka did well at the top of the order. And Angelo Matthews stabilised the team when he came into the squad. But obviously, he only played a few matches as well. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, the cricket board got sacked, and then they were brought back. And then let's see how long they last this time, because there's political interference, and then the ICC has suspended them as well. So I think if Pakistani cricket fans think they've got it bad, try being a Sri Lankan cricket fan.
True, very true. And I think close on their heels of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh have also had their huge problems, especially with their leadership, with this Shakib business, back and forth. So, what about them? How did they do?
Yeah, again, only won 2 games. They beat Sri Lanka, they beat Afghanistan. They didn't have a great tournament. I think their fans are unhappy. I think Bangladesh are one of those teams who see themselves as a team that can challenge some of the big boys in the world of cricket, but they very rarely do that. And this World Cup was another example of them flat receiving. As I said, 2 wins out of 9, that's a really disappointing performance. They had a couple of injuries. And then that incident with Angelo Matthews, where he was timed out. I mean, what was all that about? That was just unnecessary. It was an incident that gave cricket a bad name. Are you really that desperate that you want to time out an opposition batsman? I know you're desperate to win. You want to get 2 points and qualify for the Champions Trophy, which of course they did. But that was just that stunk of desperation, really. And I think Bangladesh will be very disappointed with their performance at the World Cup, and expect lots of changes. I think both in personnel, captaincy as well.
Hmm. And talking about I guess bad performances. I don't know of any title defense that's gone this bad as it did for England. I mean, what happened there with England?
Well, they came into the tournament as one of the favourites. I actually thought they'd be at least in the semi-finals. I thought it would be an India-England or India-Australia final, and they just had an absolute nightmare, didn't they? I think people criticised Babar Azam for his captaincy and his performance to a certain extent, but Josh Butler just had a complete nightmare with the bat. His keeping wasn't great, and his captaincy was well below par. And what did they do? They won 3 games towards the end of the tournament. They finally found some form. Ben Stokes came into the team and started performing. They obviously missed him at the start of the tournament, but it was their choice to take him when he wasn't fully fit. And as you say, it was a horrendous title defence. And I know conditions weren't in their favour. It's a subcontinent, totally different to English conditions, but you'd expect an England team to go out there and perform a lot better. Their tactics were poor. No sign of Bazball. I think it was just bad ball that they were playing. And their approach, it was all confused, and most of their players can say that they had a very poor tournament. And we've seen them announce their squads for the West Indies, and you can see that there are a lot of changes to the white ball team. And there's no surprise in my mind as to why those changes have now been made. Disastrous tournament for them.
Mm. And from a nightmare to a fairy tale, like actually of Afghanistan. My God, did they impress everybody or not? I mean, what did they do here?
Well, for me, I think when you look at sort of teams performing above their expectations, it's got to be Afghanistan. Winning 4 games, including beating England and that win against Pakistan. To beat England and Pakistan, absolutely immense. But it wasn't just the fact that they won 4 games; it was their brand of cricket that they played. Their batters attacked, and then they had batters who batted sensibly. And I think a lot of praise should be given to Jonathan Trott, their coach, who instilled some discipline, some tactical awareness, game awareness into the Afghanistan team. So often we see them start well and be 100 for 2 in 12 or 13 overs and then collapse to 200 all out. But this time their batting was totally different kettle of fish because, as I said, they had those stable batters in that middle order who could score at 6 and over, bat sensibly. And their bowling, we know that they've got world-class spinners, in Rashid Khan and Mujib and Nur Ahmed and, Mohammad Nabi. We know that they'll take wickets in those conditions and contain the opposition batters. So they did fantastically well. And even their paces, they backed them up really well. So Afghanistan cricket, considering they've never played an international match at home, they can go, well, they went back to Afghanistan and they were treated like heroes, and they fully deserve that. So a fantastic tournament for them and very well deserved.
And talking about being treated like heroes, I think Pakistan were treated anything but heroes back home, where so many changes happened. Obviously, you can tell me a lot about Pakistan, so let's see what you have to say.
Oh, do I have to talk about them? But the thing is, I mean, expectations for Pakistan cricket fans are always high. You go into a World Cup, they won the World Cup in 1992, and it's always that, we can reach the semi-finals and then who knows. But really, the fact is that they beat Sri Lanka and Netherlands in the first 2 games, and I think people's hopes got a little bit too high. And then, it was just one disaster after the other. The loss to Afghanistan, that nail biter against Afghanistan, against South Africa, my apologies.
Yeah.
And then, defeats to Australia, England. It was a very below par tournament for Pakistan. And you've got to look at the players. You've got to look at the leadership as well. And, we've seen post-World Cup that obviously Mickey Arthur, Grant Bradburn, Babar Azam, the chief selector, I don't think there's anyone not being replaced. So they're all, how do you put it? It's a new set of people come in, and it's no surprise, really. It was a very disappointing tournament. And you can say that sometimes teams don't qualify for semi-finals through bad luck. But I think Pakistan didn't qualify for the semi-finals because of poor cricket and their approach. We've criticised Pakistan's batting approach. They batted in a very defensive, timid way, apart from Fakhar Zaman. The bowling was below par. The spinners, absolute terrible performance from all the spinners. And I think, we've got 4 years to plan for the next World Cup. I just hope that the planning is a lot better than it was this time around, because I think we go into every tournament and there's last minute changes and people brought in and people dropped. And it just seems like all too frenetic and chaotic. But yeah, it was a very poor World Cup for Pakistan.
Yeah, and as you said, we depended on luck and on other results, and one of the results was the New Zealand one against I guess was it against South Africa? I can't remember, but so I guess New Zealand is the team that actually knocked us out in a sense. So how did they do actually?
I thought they did well. I think most people thought that they'd reached the semi-finals, and if they got any further, that would be, a great achievement. Considering Kane Williamson missed a large part of the tournament, they had other injuries as well. But New Zealand can hold their heads up high. Rachin Ravindra had a great tournament. Daryl Mitchell had a very good tournament. Santner, a number of their players had very good tournaments. Yeah, maybe at the top of the order, the likes of Conway didn't quite do as well as they could have. Um, but reaching the semi-finals and then losing to India, I think New Zealand can be proud of their efforts. They're one of those teams that they'll give 100% every match. And I think, as I say, they can hold their heads up high. They achieved probably on a par as to what expectations were. They're a very good all-round side with some wonderful cricketers. And as I say, I think they did well.
Hmm. And over to South Africa, the I guess the perennial chokers as they're always referred to, but they did much better. I don't feel that they actually choked. I mean, yeah, they actually played good cricket and then got beaten fairly and squarely as well.
Yeah, I mean, they won 7 out of their 9 group matches, which was a fantastic effort for South Africa. I think not many people predicted them to make the semi-finals. So for them to reach the semi-finals and then obviously lose to a rampant Australian team was a very good effort. I think South Africa's batting was great to watch. They really were. They were one of my favourite teams to watch in this tournament, especially with the bat. The likes of Miller and Rassie and Klassen, Quinton de Kock. These guys showed how to bat in those conditions, their strike rates, the way they batted. And, the likes of Coetzee had a good tournament, and their spinner, Maharaj, Shamsi, had very good tournaments as well. Maybe you can look at the likes of Bavuma, perhaps didn't perform to expectations. He was carrying an injury. But I think they did really well to reach the semi-finals. I think they can be proud of their efforts. I know Cricket South Africa were very happy with the team's performance. But yeah, I mean, they've got a bright future because they've got a number of players. Marco Jansen is another one who had a good tournament. They've got a number of future superstars and guys who will do very well for them in the coming years.
Hmm. And now, I guess over to the finalists. India, unbeaten throughout the tournament until this last game. I mean, they were just phenomenal, weren't they? I mean, they had everything covered in their team combination.
There won't have been many people who thought that they wouldn't win this tournament. I think going into the tournament, probably most experts thought that India would win the World Cup, home advantage, big crowds, conditions in their favour, pitches in their favour. So it's a surprise that they've not won this tournament. They'll be very, very disappointed because I think when you look in 4 years' time, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, will these guys be around? Probably not. So it's, I think, probably their last chance to win a World Cup. You could see the disappointment on their faces. Maybe they peaked too early. I don't know, because the thing is, when you're playing in a final, you've won your previous 10 matches. The only thing I would say is that their middle to lower order wasn't really tested very often in this tournament, and because their top order struggled today, that middle and lower order, they were like rabbits in the headlights against Australia. I think India will be very disappointed. The board will be disappointed. Let's see what happens in terms of personnel. Let's see if Rohit Sharma carries on as captaincy. But I think the brand of cricket that India played was fantastic, especially with the bat. Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli had great tournaments. We saw brilliance from Shreyas Iyer and KL Rahul and others. The spinners had good tournaments. The pacers, Shami was outstanding. Bumrah had a good tournament as well. So I think they just fell at the final hurdle. Maybe it was down to pressure. Yeah, Sanjay Manjrekar mentioned about the fact that Australia had the better of the conditions. But come on, that's the way it goes. Tough, isn't it? You can't have everything your own way.
Yeah, and then Australia. I mean, they had a bit of a nightmare start. I think they lost two games to start with. Everybody thought, oh, okay, this is the year for Australia. But Shoaib Akhtar basically mentioned somewhere saying that just watch out. No, we've probably woken up a sleeping giant actually, and he was right. Actually, wasn't
Well, Ricky Ponting said today on commentary that Australia don't just go into tournaments to take part in them; they go into tournaments to win them. This is a team that is battle hardened. They have experience. They have match winners. They're mentally so tough. So even after they lost the first two games, I think most people knew that at some point they would come back, bounce back. And they came back and won all the rest of their remaining seven group matches, and then the semi-final and the final. They just seem to get better and better with each match. Pat Cummins' captaincy grew. The players around him, the key players, they were absolutely fantastic. They performed. A lot of their players performed to the level that they wanted to. So they were carrying very few passengers. Like the teams like Pakistan and those guys were carrying a number of passengers in each match. With Australia, you had 11 players who were pretty much at the top of their game. And, that's why they won this tournament. As I say, great captaincy, batters like the likes of Warner, Marsh, who can give the ball a blast. And, you've got the likes of Labuschagne, and Travis Head was brilliant in these last two games as well. And then, the strength in depth as well. Zampa was fantastic. I think second highest wicket taken in the tournament. Stark, Cummins, Hazelwood, they all took wickets. And, they had, as I said, they had backup players who could come in. And so the 11 that were playing, they knew that they had to play to their best. Otherwise, they'd be shown the door and somebody else would come in and take their place. For me, Australia were the best side in the tournament. I know India won 10 matches in a row, but for me, Australia were the team. They deserved to win the tournament. They were the best team. And Pat Cummins was fantastic as a captain as well.
Okay. Anyway, thank you very much, Said, for your time. And I hope in about 4 years' time we'll be talking about Pakistan as the best team of the tournament. But hey, we can dream.
Let's see. I hope so.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. Salam.